History remembers kings as heroes, conquerors, and empire builders. But what happens when the person ruling millions is unstable, obsessed, paranoid, or completely detached from reality? In today's video, we're diving deep into the 10 weirdest rulers in history. These aren't just quirky leaders. These are rulers who terrified their courts, confused their nations, and sometimes destroyed their own empires. Starting off with the 10, have Sapra Murat Niyazov. Born on February 19, 1940, Niyazov was the first president of Turkmenistan, a landlocked Central Asian nation, largely covered by the Karakum Desert, and with a population of over 7 million. Born in Kipchak, he grew up to establish an intense centralized and autocratic regime, marked by an extraordinary cult of personality. Niyazov grew up in state care after he became an orphan, when his father died during the Second World War. Trained as an engineer, he quickly climbed through the ranks within the Communist Party. Appointed by Mikhail Gorbachev in 1985, he declared Turkmen independence from the Soviet Union, becoming its first president in 1991. Niyazov's government combined rigid control with personal glorification. Some of the most notable acts include renaming months after himself and his mother, built a rotating golden statue of himself, including one that rotated to face the sun. He also made his book mandatory reading nationwide. And last but not least, he banned ballet, opera, beards, and public smoking. His rule blended nationalism, personal branding, and authoritarian control. In a way, he turned an entire country into a stage. He died of heart failure in December 2006, and his successor, Mr. Gurbanguly, dismantled parts of his cult, but preserved a strong authoritarian structure. On the 9th spot, we got Joanna of Castile, also known as Juana la Loca, or Joanna the Mad, was the ruling queen of Castile in 1504, and Aragon from 1516, daughter of Isabella, the first of Castile, and Ferdinand, the second of Aragon. She inherited their united Spanish realms, but ruled only by name only. Raised in the court of Catholic monarchs, Joanna was highly educated in fields of languages, law, and philosophy. In 1496, she got married to Philip the Handsome of Habsburg. After the deaths of her elderly siblings, she quickly became the Queen of Castile in 1504, succeeding her mother. However, her reign quickly turned into rivalry, as Philip sought to rule by right of his wife's reign, whilst Ferdinand reclaimed control by claiming his daughter's mental incapacity. In 1916, she inherited Aragon jointly with her son Charles, the first later Emperor Charles V. He maintained her seclusion and ruled in her name. The term Juana la Loca originated after her husband Philip died. She reportedly refused to separate from his body. However, modern historians debate whether she actually suffered genuine illness or was deliberately dishonored to justify male dominance. She died at the age of 75, after nearly half a century in exile. On the 8th spot, we got Charles VI of France, once known to be beloved and promising king, to suddenly fall into a state of madness. Charles VI was the King of France from 1380 to 1422. Crowned at Reims at the age of 11, Charles initially ruled under his powerful uncles, that is Philip the Bold, Duke of Burgundy. In 1388, he gained personal authority and recalled his father's advisors. His early tenure restored stability in the country, which won him the title, Well-Beloved. In 1392, 4 years later, after he gained personal control, he suffered his first psychotic behavior while in Brittany. Thereafter, he suffered several mental illness, as he known to have failed to recognize his own family, believed he was made of glass, and refused to bathe for months. Not to mention all this happened when France was in the middle of the 100 Years' War. His incapacity empowered rival factions at court, whose feud erupted into civil war after the murder of his brother Louis of Orléans in 1407. He later died in Paris in 1422. His reign summarized the importance of mental health in leadership. Next up on our list, we got one of the ruthless men in African history. His name is Idi Amin. Idi Amin Dada Ume was a Ugandan military officer who ruled the nation of Uganda from 1971 to 1979. His time as president was wildly known for mass killings, ethnic persecution, his alleged cannibalistic nature, and total economic collapse of the Ugandan economy. Amin joined the British colonial king's African Rifles in 1946, serving in Kenya and Somalia. By the 1960s, he had become one of the few Ugandans to be promoted to senior rank. Once Uganda gained independence, he was linked with the then Prime Minister Milton Obote. However, in January 25, 1971, he overthrew Obote in a military coup while Obote was in abroad. Amin proclaimed himself as the president and commander-in-chief of the Ugandan army. Idi Amin ruled Uganda with unpredictability and brutality. Human rights organizations estimates that over 100,000 to 500,000 people were killed by his army and the secret police. In 1972, he expelled tens of thousands of Assassins from Uganda, which reshaped the country's economy overnight. He also broke relations with Britain and Israel, calling himself conqueror of the British Empire. In 1978, Amin tried invading Tanzania, which provoked a counter-offensive by Tanzania and Ugandan exiles. This made Amin to flee to Libya first, then settled in Saudi Arabia, where he lived in exile, until his death in 2003. He was buried in Jeddah, and never faced trial for his heinous crimes he committed. His reign left the people of Uganda in total disarray and traumatized. Next, we have Jean Bedel Bokassa. Jean Bedel Bokassa was a Central African soldier and a ruler of the Central African Republic from 1966 to 1979. His reign was fueled with modernization efforts, culminating in extremely bad reputation for brutality and excess. Born in 22nd February 1921, Jean Bedel grew a career as an officer in the French army and fought in the Second World War, earning decorations such as Légion d'honneur. After returning home, he commanded the Central African Army, which on December 31, 1965, overthrew President David Dacko, becoming its new ruler. Bokassa was initially popular for the development of infrastructure projects. However, he later ruled by decree, declaring himself president for life in 1972, and in 1976, transformed the republic into an empire, crowning himself as Emperor Bokassa, the first in Bangwi's Cathedral in 1977. This ceremony was estimated to cost around $20 million, which was very huge as the country was considered one of the poorest nations on earth. This event was modeled after Napoleon's coronation with golden throne, crown encrusted with diamonds. Meanwhile, schools and hospitals lacked funding. In 1979, the massacre of protesting school children provoked international outrage, which France launched Operation Barracuda, deposing him while he was abroad. He lived in exile in Côte d'Ivoire and France until his return in 1986, where he was tried for murder, torture, and embezzlement of state funds. He received death sentence, but was later commuted to life imprisonment. He was, however, freed in 1993 and died 3 years later in Bangui. Bokassa remains one of the most controversial African rulers in the 20th century. Taking on the fifth spot, we have Ludwig II of Bavaria. Now let's shift the tone. Ludwig II wasn't known for cruelty, but rather fantasy. Born in 1845 at Nymphenburg Palace, Munich, he was King of Bavaria from 1864 until his death in 1886. Nicknamed the Fairy Tale King, he was renowned for his artistic vision, architectural masterpiece, and outgoing personality, which turned him into a romantic cultural icon of Bavaria and beyond. Ascending the throne at 18, after the death of his father, King Maximilian II, Ludwig II inherited a constitutional monarchy in a period of German unification. As a passionate admirer of composer Richard Wagner, Ludwig II funded Wagner's operas, and sought to embody their mythic themes in architecture and arts. His palaces in Linderhof, Schachen, Neuschwanstein, and Herrenchiemsee, sorry I pronounced them incorrectly, were expressed as theatrical dreamscapes, using modern innovations such as central heating, electric lighting, and automated dining tables. Though these architectural designs were impressive, they mounted an insane amount of debt. Ministers declared him mentally unfit to rule. Days later, he was found dead in a lake under mysterious circumstances. To this day, historians debate whether he was mad or simply misunderstood. His castles, now palaces of King Ludwig II, attract millions of visitors annually, and actually inspired the Walt Disney Company's fairy tale imagery. Now back to crazy and cruel leaders. We have Vlad III of Wallachia, modern-day Romania. Vlad III, also known as Vlad the Dracula, or Vlad the Impaler, was the Prince of Wallachia in the 15th century. Known for his ruthless defense and attack against the Ottoman Empire, and form of punishment, made him one of the most feared rulers of medieval Europe. Born in Transylvania in 1431, Vlad was the second son of Vlad Dracul II. During their teens, Vlad and his brother Radi were held hostages at the Ottoman court, where he witnessed the empire discipline and cruelty. After his father and elder brother death in 1447, Vlad fought to reclaim the Wallachian throne, whereby he succeeded intermittently between 1448 and 1476. During his reign, he eliminated criminals, rebellious nobles, and foreign foes alike, using his signature punishment, impalement on wooden stakes. That is the reason he got the name Vlad the Impaler. In various chronicles, it is said that he executed tens of thousands, and described horrifying displays of impaled corpse to terrify opponents during his campaign against Mehmed in 1462. To his enemies, he was a sadistic monster. To Romanians, he remained a symbol of defiance against foreign domination. His legend inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula, and centuries later, his name still chills people. Taking on the bronze spot is Ivan IV, or what most people call Ivan the Terrible, but terrible originally meant formidable, not evil. Ivan was the first crowned Tsar of all Russia. Born on August 25, 1530, his reign transformed Moscow into a centralized empire. Ivan was the son of Grand Prince Vasily III and Yelena Glinskaya. He became an orphan by the age of 8 and grew up around violent rivalries, which shaped his mistrust of the aristocracy. At age 16 he was crowned as Tsar, where he asserted imperial authority derived from divine right, which led to Russia's rise as a major Eurasian power. However, his reign became genuinely terrifying. After losing his wife, Ivan grew deeply paranoid. He created the Oprichnina, a secret police force dressed in black, riding black horses, carrying dog heads and brooms as symbols. Their job: crush perceived enemies. Entire cities were massacred, and in one tragic moment, Ivan struck his own son during an argument, killing him. His grief afterward was immense, but the damage was done. Fear had become state policy. Despite his tyranny, Ivan IV is remembered as the ruler who forged the autocratic tsardom that shaped Russia's future. On the second spot we got Elagabalus. Elagabalus became emperor at just 14 years old. Born in 203 CE in Emesa, also known as Homs in modern-day Syria. Elagabalus reigned as emperor from 218 to 222 CE. As an emperor, instead of respecting Roman traditions, he promoted the worship of a Syrian sun god called Elagabal, and attempted to elevate this god above Jupiter, who was by then Rome's supreme deity. His disregard for Roman religious norms provoked scandals among various Roman elites. He hosted extreme banquets, overturned social norms, and ignored governance. Another weird fact about Elagabalus was that he requested to be called lady, and sought surgery to obtain female genitalia. Eventually, the Praetorian Guard turned on him, and at just 18 years old, He was assassinated, and his body thrown into the Tiber River. Rome erased much of his memory, a punishment known as damnatio memoriae. Elagabalus became a lasting symbol of imperial decadence. And finally, taking on the first spot, we have the one and only Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanius, also known as Caligula. Caligula became Roman emperor in 37 AD. He was the third emperor of Rome. His brief reign from 37 to 41 CE became infamous for cruelty, extravagance, and erratic behavior. Born in 31st August 12 CE, Caligula was raised amid military camps, where soldiers nicknamed him Caligula for his miniature boots he wore. After the suspicious deaths and exiles of much of his family under Emperor Tiberius, he was eventually adopted as Tiberius' heir and became emperor at 24. In the beginning of his reign, he restored political prisoners, remitted taxes, and even sponsored public entertainments. However, after a severe illness, he appeared to mark a change as he revived treason trials, executed rivals, and displayed divine pretensions, ordering statues of himself to be placed among the gods, and ordered his minsters to worship him. Lavish spending exhausted the finances of the state, which led to new taxes and confiscations. Ancient writers like Suetonius, Cassius Dio, among others, described Caligula as delusional and sadistic, claiming that he performed incest with his sisters and planned to make his horse Incitatus consul. However, modern historians worry that these accounts were colored by sensational spite, as some suggest he suffered neurological illness after his illness. On January 24, 41 CE, members of Praetorian Guard, led by Cassius Chaerea, murdered Caligula, his wife and daughter, during the Palatine Games. Caligula's 4-year rule became an enduring emblem of tyranny. Rome had seen tyrants before, but Caligula, he made insanity look imperial.